Guys, I'm sorry that we're running just a tad late. It's actually 6:06. We're going to go ahead and call this um, public hearing. I'm sorry, special call meeting to order. Got my wrong paper here. Special call a meeting to order. We're going to ask, let's see, Commissioner Henderson, if you will, lead us in prayer tonight, and Commissioner Cowan, if you will, lead us in our pledge tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, everyone bow their heads. Dear Heavenly Father, once again we come before Thee in prayer. We come to just thank You for just waking us up this morning and allow us just to go about our day. We know that You are certainly a good God, my Father, one who sits up high and look down low and know what our needs are. And we just thank You, and we ask that You lead us and guide us. We thank You. We just thank You. We just thank You. This we pray in our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ's name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. We are here to present the fiscal 21 budget, Mr. Kerr.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Tonight, of course, we're here to ask that the board adopt the FY21 budget. This is a process that the budget process begins in January. January 22nd was when we distributed all of the budget preparation manuals to all of the departments. And I'd like to take a minute to thank all of the department heads, the elected officials, the constitutional officers, and in particular, Brittany White, our finance director, for all of the work and the dedication and the due diligence that they all put into developing their budgets. I think that everyone did a good job. Everyone had and kept in mind being good stewards of the taxpayers' dollars, and we have been successful in developing a balanced budget without increasing the millage rate. Also, I'd like to point out that the general fund budget for FY21 is being proposed at $75,405,206. Some of the goals, go ahead with the first slide, I think. Sorry. We do have a couple of slides we'll go through here. Sure, it's just going to take just a second. Okay, there we go. One of the things that was extremely important to us as we went through this was to link the budget and all of the expenditures of the budget to the strategic plan. As you know, we've identified 5 strategic outcomes that are listed as you see them up here. And the goal is the ultimate goal is to provide a safe, well-planned community that respects values and informed citizenry, embraces diversity, preserves natural resources, and cultivates economic and social opportunities. These 5 strategies, pardon me, these 5 strategies are to cultivate a culture of trust, enhance quality of life, create a framework for strategic economic development, strengthen and expand facilities and infrastructure to meet the needs of the public, and to provide a safe and secure community. Next slide, please. Our goals were to conform to the current millage rate with no increase. We wanted to make sure that all of our department heads, as well as our constitutional officers and elected officials, had an opportunity to present their individual budgets to the board, which they did over a series of budget workshops. All of our departments did begin with $0 funding, and then were required to justify any of the dollars that were requested, in particular those monies that were requested above and beyond what had been their budgets for FY20. And again, we wanted to make sure they were linked to the strategic plan. We also wanted to make sure that we would be able to fund Fire Station 4. Next slide, please. Some of the challenges were the increased salary costs. We knew that we would be moving from the current salaries to our next step in our step compensation plan. This was a plan that was adopted by the board in 2019 that moves all of our employees through a 20-step plan from entry level through to the top of their pay scale. And so we wanted to make sure that we're able to do that in order to maintain, to attract good employees, but also to maintain the employees that we do have. We had an increase in our health insurance costs of 7%. We did take into consideration the uncertainty and all of the impacts of COVID-19. And so that was quite a bit of consideration there. We also had quite a few capital needs in several of the departments. Debt service, as I mentioned before, pardon me. Debt service for payments for Fire Station 4. That's will be a major project, and we wanted to ensure again that we could service that debt. And then funding the positions to man Fire Stations 4 and 8, as well as the renovated Fire Station number 2, which those will be coming online during this fiscal year. Next slide, please. Some of the highlights are that we have that are items of note. We estimated an 8% increase in the tax digest. The step level raises of $1,604,460. Our insurance premium increase of $617,000. Pardon me, $891. $2,300,000 in salary and benefits for new positions. We will be placing the budget proposes to put $500,000 in capital improvement, $372,000 in contingency for unexpected changes. We are also putting $370,000 for vehicle purchases with the Office of the Sheriff. And then we are anticipating $1,297,912 to be received in grants. And with that, we will be funding $545,760 in matching funds. And this also includes a significant upgrade to our county server. Next slide, please. With that, I am going to turn this over to Brittany White, our finance director, for any comments on the remainder of on the budget and some of the budget particulars.
As I mentioned in the last meeting, when we approve a budget for the county, we're approving all of the county funds. So Lloyd hit on the details of the general fund budget, but we also do have special revenue funds, we have capital funds, and we have enterprise funds. So that brings the county total budget to $105,594,339. Of that, $75.4 million is general fund. $12.6 million is special revenue funds, capital project funds is 1.4, and enterprise funds is 16.1 million. And that wraps up our presentation, so we'll turn it back over to you, Chairman.
Thank you. Commissioners, we're going to give you opportunity to express yourself about your concerns or your or maybe non-concerns about the budget. We're going to start with District 1, Commissioner Edwards.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll start out by telling Brittany and Lloyd and department heads and the constitutional officers, thank you. I told Brittany a few minutes ago I would not be on her Christmas list, I'm sure, this year after some of the emails I've sent her in the last few weeks, her and Lloyd. But my goal was to look out for the constituents of District 1 and the county as a whole in terms of being fiscally responsible. I do that every year, and we always come down to negotiations and last minute budget changes, and I'm sure this year will be no different. My major concern going into this budget season, not necessarily going into the budget season, but when we actually started working on the budget, was the effects of COVID-19 and what it would have on the ability of our citizens to pay their property taxes as the year went along. I talked to several county commissioners and even chairmen in neighboring counties, and they seem to think that it would be no different than 2008 in terms of what'll happen with the ability of the citizens to pay their property taxes. We'll know more in the third and fourth quarters of the year, maybe as early as the late second quarter of this year. That was my concern, especially when we've got an unemployment rate hovering around 12%. I've beat that horse till it's dead, I'm sure. And with the state cutting their budget 11%, or roughly $3 billion, I believe it is, I can't help but believe, I hope I'm wrong, but I can't help but believe we're going to be in similar circumstances as the year goes on. In saying that, we stated earlier in the budget work session or the budget hearing, I got here late, but I got in on a conversation that had to do with our property valuations. And I believe after this budget is finished, we've got to take a long look at another option for valuing our properties for our citizens, other than just a market jump and ambiguous, some really ambiguous property valuations. And that's not a product of anything anybody's done here. It's just a product of the system, I believe, that's flawed. So I'd like to take a look at that later on. I don't think it's any secret that I've asked for more cuts to the proposed budget. I'm sure we'll have some discussions of that as we proceed through the evening. But those were my thoughts going into this budget process, and I hope we can come to an agreement at some point. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think as we move forward in really reviewing and making the best decision that we possibly can to ensure that, one, we provide the services for our citizens that they're asking for. And I think at the end of the day, that's the most important thing that we have to consider. I agree. We definitely want to ensure that we are good stewards of the taxpayer dollars that we get, and that we're allocating those appropriately into the right things. And so I think as we move forward, and I'm in hopes as well that as we look at this budget, and we'll be able to determine what's going to be the best for us going forward, where we're not actually cutting any type of services at the end of the day for our citizens. And so I'm in hopes that once we really complete everything and look everything line by line, that we will come to a complete agreement on what we're going to do and how we're going to move forward to be still able to function as a community. And because things are changing, things are growing, people are migrating here, they're moving here. And so it's going to take us to really dig deep and figure out what we're going to do. I think one of the things that I want to encourage this board going forward We do talk a lot about, our property taxes. I think one of the things that I would like to see moving forward is that we really sit down and find strategic ways on how to generate thinking outside of the box and finding ways to generate additional revenue where we can actually do the things that we need to do to continue to have, as our county grows, not always being dependent. And I know we do depend on, property taxes to function. We depend on fees, but really sit down and evaluate and find additional revenue source. And then really look at economic development. Really work with our economic development team. Look at those commercial businesses, those retail businesses. And I think when we do begin to bring in that additional retail, commercial, that's kind of really going to help the load of some of our constituents when it comes to property tax. So I'd really like to kind of begin to dig deep and look at into that a little bit further going forward. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Schultz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Jackie, I've prepared some comments that I would like to be made as part of the minutes, and I will provide that version, this printed version for you. This upcoming vote on the budget for the county M&O will be my last on this board. But my first year as a commissioner was in 2009, and my first budget vote was mid-year because the economy had collapsed. We had to cut positions, furlough staff, dissolve whole departments, and completely restructure our county government. It was heartbreaking and painful for everyone involved. And when it came time to approve the next fiscal year budget, we had no choice but to cut 20% of our operating budget. For the next 5 years, we struggled. We balanced the budget on the backs of our employees and raised our millage to be able to provide the necessary services desired by the taxpayers. Now, fast forward to today, the tough decisions we have made over the past 12 years have put us in a much stronger financial position. We have a healthy fund balance and recently attained a AAA bond rating. This would bode well for our financial future had we not been dealt the hand of COVID-19. The effects on the economy are still unfolding. Unemployment for April in Newton County was listed at 12.4%, and the May numbers will not be available until July. Economists project that unemployment will hover around 10% until the end of 2021. Tax collections quite likely will be sluggish, which means that we need to be very careful in adopting a budget for FY 2021. And let me just clarify, FY 2021 begins July 1. A lot of people think that it doesn't start until January, but it starts July of this year. We know we have fire stations, a new senior center, animal control building to staff. And in good conscience, and based on past experience, the last thing I want to do is hire someone only to turn around and furlough them. It would be unfair to that person, so my gut tells me to proceed with great caution in approving any new positions, and only those that are absolutely essential. Now, allow me to make some additional points. Based on recent social developments, including calls for change in law enforcement, this necessitates that we as a community take a careful look at the choices we make between law enforcement, education, public safety, and quality of life. Do we want to continue to fund jails and incarcerations, or instead fund programs that deter crime? Tough social questions that need to be answered. There's only so much gold in the pot at the end of the rainbow, and how do we use it to better our community and do the greatest good for the greatest number of people? Realistically, if we want to hire and retain the best public safety employees, the incoming board will need to revisit compensation levels. As a community, we cannot continue to expect to hire the highest caliber young men and women, train them, and ask them to put themselves in harm's way to protect us without compensating at a level deserving of their commitment. Ultimately, all of our county-owned facilities need to be ones that appeal to all citizens, not a select few. I encourage the board to work with members of the Black community to address the concerns regarding Gaithers, to ensure that it is a place enjoyed by all Newton County citizens for now and in the future. And I look forward to the discussions that we will have to determine what our FY 2021 budget will be.
Thank you, ma'am. Commissioner Henderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. About 21 years ago, going on 22 years this year, I sat behind the horseshoe, which we wasn't meeting over here. We were meeting over in the old building for the tag office here. And I can remember Mr. Wayman Wilman, Mr. Paul Todd. And they came in and was, the commission meeting wasn't full, but there was enough people there. And there was always somebody there that said, we're keeping an eye on you, our commissioner, to make sure you would spend our money the same way we would spend it. But to make a long story short, and what I learned over the years is that when it comes down to taxpayers' money, all of our money, would I spend my money the same way I was spending taxpayers' money? Would I allow things that maybe I had control over, such as what Commissioner Schultz were referring to, the murder farms or Gaithers Plantation, or the old statue, Confederate historic statue that's out in the park, which is on county property? Would I be comfortable with it, or would the community be comfortable with it? And what was always said, and what I believe was that I am a commissioner who is an extension of the public. In other words, as long as the majority of people in District 4 believe that I was doing what they wanted to do, then I would survive and be a commissioner and be their spokesperson. And even though it would be a 4-to-1 vote, I still stood on the premise of that discrimination was not a part of what I wanted to be of, and I would stand up against it. In fact, if you could look at some of the letters over the years that I have written, both to the board, my fellow commissioners, and not the newer ones here, but I wrote to them saying, well, nah, this is not the right decision. But getting back to the budget, when you take a good look, and this is what I always say, and I'm gonna end this, and it's probably a little off what we're talking about around your communities. If you see no nice little park in the community where you can come in and sit down at the end of the day, then you might want to look at somebody different. If you look in the community and you see over 20-some years that we've been here and haven't even been a discussion about that statue, everybody want to just say, well, we'll discuss it next time, get 3 votes. Well, it shouldn't be that way. Anybody on the board or commission who's a commission should be able to put something on the agenda, and it used to be that way, put something on the agenda which their constituents want them to put on it. Regardless of whether other commission like it, as long as it was something about a need in the community or what the citizen want, then there should be no reason for it to be. We shouldn't have to be discussing about a statue here this day and time. We shouldn't have to be discussing about a plantation that we're funding 100.
Pretty fast now. So a lot of income coming into the county, and I think that's been necessary because the county has broken the county here. We filled up all the holes, I think. And I think I've done a good job at that, by the way. But I think it's time to start slowing down. And I'm not, as I stated, with some of the other members here and to the chair, I'm not comfortable with this budget as it's written right now. So I'm just, I do think that the numbers for the way the economy is going to be affected by this pandemic, we really haven't realized it yet. I'd just rather be a little more cautious and pull the reins back a little bit and just slow it down. Just to see, because I don't know where we're going to be in December. I don't know what's going to happen in the flu season. I don't know what's going to happen. I know right now it's having an impact all the way around. And Those are my concerns.
Thank you, Mr. Chow. Guys, I'm gonna turn it back over to Mr. Kerr if on to it. I just want to say that it is so important that we make sure that we provide adequate services to the citizens of Butte County. In District 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, no one wants to have a fire at their home and can't get a fire truck to get in the house. So we gotta make sure that, I mean, that's what citizens pay taxes for. No one wants to get burglarized and they can't get a debit to come to their house where they pay taxes. No one wants to, and I'm not calling you to make sure I'm clarifying for everybody. No one wants to live in an area where they can't afford to pay their home insurance because their ISO rating is so high that they can't afford to pay. And, you know, we had so many people come up here begging for some help. Because they couldn't afford to pay their home insurance because their rating was so high. We don't have people come up here crying about crime in the neighborhood and asking for help. So guys, I you know, and I do understand that there's a need to maybe take a meal down for some tad, and I know that's what some of you guys want to do. And so I'm going to let Mr. Kerr down, and we do have to be out here at 7 on the time because the meeting will start at 7. So I'm going to let Mr. Kerr talk about an alternative budget that includes still all public safety. The citizens they work every day and they expect out of their community. They expect they don't want it, they expect it. They work hard and they want these services provided to them. They want to feel safe, they want to feel comfortable when they want to home. So I'm turning it over to Mr. And they want their roads, they want the roads done, they want the grass cut, they want paper picked up on the side of the road. And those that they pay taxes for, they want them first. So I'm gonna turn it over to Mr. Kerr. He has my alternate budget that we want to talk about for a few minutes and just shoot with everybody what it actually is. I think there's $1 million that you guys want to be clear on. And I think you can get up there.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Brittany and I did sit down this afternoon and did take a hard look at this to see if there weren't some other options that we could use for some funding. And I did talk with the chairman about it a little bit this afternoon. At the end of this current fiscal year, we believe that we will have, currently we have an excess revenue collections of $5,765,103. We believe there is some money, or some expenses that will continue to have to come out of that. But at the end of the year, we anticipate that it will be $3,558,000 and some additional. Because of that, I would like to propose that we would not budget the $500,000 for capital improvements, that we would not budget $372,570 for contingency for fiscal year changes, and that we would not include in the budget the $135,000 for the server upgrade. That would give us a total of $1,007,570. Instead, what I propose to do would be to leave those lines blank for $0 and adopt the budget with $0. At the end, when we close out fiscal year 2020, we would take, knowing that we would have those funds, $1,007,570, that we would then we would do a budget amendment from the cash reserve, because that money would have to go into cash reserve, but that we would take that money and put it back into the 2021 budget. And then we would have it available for us to be able to use for those expenses. We could use those as we needed to put them into the capital improvement fund, particularly for the server upgrade and for the capital improvements. And then also we could have those funds available in capital improvements for the purchase of the server upgrade. But it would take a budget amendment to do that. Now, by doing so, we would reduce the total budget by that $1 million plus mark, and we could reduce the millage rate by 0.3 of a mil, which would help the millage rate to be brought down, and then that would give some relief to the taxpayers.
Thank you, sir. Y'all need to get those numbers again?
Please.
Sure. That's true. You could get those numbers again. Sure.
We want to reduce the budget by $1,007,570, and that would be $500,000 from the capital improvements, $372,570 from contingency for fiscal year changes, and $135,000 for server upgrade.
Everybody,
Is it 130 or 135 for silver?
135.
Yeah, you have any questions? Mr. Stokes,
What's the part?
will you register?
So what I just need to understand the whole budget amendment. I want to make sure we're not taking it out and putting it back in and doing a little creative pencil.
What actually we're doing is utilizing excess funds, excess tax collections from FY20. And what we would do would to take, those funds would be going into the cash reserve. And then what we would do would be to do a budget amendment to have those funds transferred to transferred to capital improvements as we needed them. We would do that budget amendment.
Commissioner Henderson.
Thank you, sir. So the cash reserve would have been about $5 million, I guess, correct? I think it was right.
The excess collections that we have currently, we're at $5,765,103.
So if we took out the $1 million some odd dollars, that would leave how much going in the cash reserve?
We anticipate that the net at the end of the year would be $3,558,000. Now that may change a little bit, but we believe that would be the net. But certainly, we believe it will be at least $3 million.
So by doing what you in this budget, doing what you suggest, that means we do give relief to the taxpayer, a little bit of relief.
That's correct. It would be 0.3 of a mil. I haven't calculated how much that would be, but it would be, some relief, yes, we understand. And it would begin turning the millage rate in the right direction.
Commissioner Garrett. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Board. Thank you, Ricky. So, the savings at the end of the fiscal year, at the end of this month,
$3,558,000 will go into the fund balance.
Yes, sir, that's correct.
And then a budget amendment after the first of the fiscal year and those three lines you discussed blank at the end of the first of this budget. And then the budget amendment to take of that 3.558 million, take 1.007 million back and pay those three budget items.
That is correct. The amendments will not be done until the point at which we need to expend those funds. So if we were going to purchase a server immediately, then we would do an amendment for that amount to go into the capital improvements. The same, likewise, if we got another capital expenditure, we are going to have to repair the roof on this building. That was one of them. And that's going to be most likely $100,000.
So we would not do those budget amendments until the local meeting.
That's correct.
So there's a possibility, a low possibility of that $100,000.
It is possible that we may not need to have the entire amount. That is correct.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, I would ask, that I'm gonna allow just a couple more questions, but we got to go ahead and make a decision on this budget, because, again, if you're not gonna pass this budget, we're gonna budget down, and, there's advertised for the budget, 6:46, and zoning starts at 7 o'clock, we're gonna advertise.
Brittany, can I ask you, at some point in time, you don't have to do it before we go, but can you do, debits and credits for me, so I can see where the debits and credits are going? And, none of this money is coming out of fund balance.
No, the money is all going to be the excess tax collections. It will come out of fund balance because we have to put those collections into the fund
But it's
balance.
not coming out of the current fund
That's
balance.
correct.
That's why I wanted to use, do a debits and
Yes,
credits.
the 19 will remain there. And we anticipate that there still will be some net increase to the fund balance because we will have additional.
Thank you.
And citizens will get the services that they, all right. Now, I'm gonna, go ahead and ask for a, if you like that idea, I'm ask for a motion that we, not approve the budget that we present and advertise for.
A motion that we not approve.
Yeah, motion to not, the budget that was advertised for.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we deny the FY 2021 budget that was advertised.
Thank you, ma'am. Second. Yes, sir. It's been motioned by Commissioner Schultz, second by Commissioner, Hill. Any more discussion? All in favor? Thank you. Budget is denied. At this time, we're gonna open it up for citizens' comments. We normally we'll do it this time. We're gonna open up for citizens' comments. Guys, gotta make your comments really quick, because it's almost 7 o'clock, and we definitely got to get out for another. Like to make comments, you can start now. Please state your name and address for the record, please. 3 minutes. 3 minutes. Thank you, guys. And also, this new proposed budget will be advertised again, so you will get an opportunity to come back and make comments about the new proposed budget. If nothing else, I took a motion that we adjourn. It's been motion by Commissioner Hilton, second by Commissioner Schultz. All in favor?
Lloyd had a question. Lloyd had a question.
Mr. Curry, you have a question?
I think you answered it. We were just discussing the timeline. We're going to have at least 2 weeks to make sure that we meet all of the advertising requirements. So we'll give you that firm date as soon as we figure it out.
All in favor? Stand adjourned.